Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Remote No Pressure podcast. We're super excited that you're here this week, bringing you another great episode, another great podcast. Before we get started, I want to tell you a couple things. Number one, this Tuesday night, we are going to have, if you guys, I don't know if you guys subscribe or not, but on Spotify, we have a Remote No Pressure fly tying radio station. Where we pick music from different genres, but you're sitting at your Vice, middle of winter, and you want to put on some music. You can go to our radio station. One of our artists, by the name of Mark Lavengood, is going to be joining us in studio this Tuesday night at 7:00. So you want to be, or around 7:30 or so. You want to be on our Instagram. That's Eastern time. Go onto our Instagram. You're going to see us play a song off the album Songs About Fly Fishing. It's super excited. I'm very excited that he's going to be here. He's a fantastic musician. If you haven't subscribed on Spotify to our Fly Tying Radio, go over and do that. Check out his music. It's phenomenal. Now, this week, our guest, super excited to have Matt Peisert on the podcast with us. And Matt is a Northern Michigan guy. He also has a day job as well, but he's going to talk to us a little bit about how, when he was in college, how he cured that itch for steelhead when the weather was perfect, and we've all been there. We're in college, or you're in class, or you're at work, and the weather is just perfect. And there's only one thing that's on your mind, and it's hooking into some cold steel or a big trout, something like that, So it's a great episode. So excited that you've joined us. Welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Well, today on the Remote No Pressure podcast, we have Matt Peisert with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Matt.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Now, you sent over your bio. I looked at your site, and one of the things I wanted to point out before we get started was you had a blog entry about great fishing tunes and tying to different songs. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Remote No Pressure launched a channel on Spotify for fly tying. And I thought that was really cool. How did you guys come up with those songs? It was you and your buddy, right?
Yeah. So it was my buddy, Adam Spence. He's a teacher at Allendale Middle School. He actually runs a fly fishing club there. And when we were in college, he was a roommate of mine. We started fly fishing together. I was pumped up about steelhead, and I was like, dude, you gotta get in on this. It was just gripping me, and I was like, hey, you gotta see this stuff. And so the bug bit him real bad shortly thereafter, and he's been all about fly fishing. And in the last year, he's really gotten into fly tying, and we've been kind of talking about what kind of tunes we listen to when we tie flies. We get together and tie and listen to music and stuff. And a lot of the stuff you notice on that list is kind of upbeat and faster. If it's too slow, my productivity goes way down when I'm tying. And that's something that he and I kind of talked about when he was writing that little blog post. Because if it's real slow, you're maybe whipping out 6 flies and you're done. But if it's fast, you can really churn them out. So.
Yeah, that's funny because when I built the playlist on Spotify, so if you go to Remote No Pressure Fly Tying Radio, when I went into a bunch of different forums and asked people, what do you listen to when you tie? And it seems like people who tie streamers are like the bigger flies, like really heavy metal music, and the people
that's mostly what we tie. So.
And the people who like the more detailed stuff are a little bit more, laid back. So it's kind of like, okay, you almost need like 3 different
22,
channels.
Yep, definitely.
So you went to Grand Valley State here, not too far from my house in Allendale, Michigan, correct?
Correct, yep.
And tell us about how, I read in your bio, you really weren't much of a party animal. You're trying to avoid that scene. Can you tell us a little bit how this bug grabbed you in college?
Yeah, so my dad took me fly fishing when I was real young on the South Branch of DeSable on the Mason Tract. And, I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun, had several trips up that way, but sports kind of took over in middle school and high school. And then when I got to college, I needed to find something to occupy my time. So my buddies wanted to kind of party. And so I had known we'd gone periodically to the road to do some steelhead fishing, occasional salmon fishing. And I had never caught a steelhead up to that point. It was a species that eluded me. If you fish for steelhead, they can be challenging for sure. Um, so I just decided, you know what? I was on the phone with one of my buddies, Travis, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna figure these fish out. And I went day after day after day, and then I decided, you know what? I need to be the first one on the river. So I had like an 8 a.m. class. Got up at 3:30 on a Monday, hit the river, and caught my first steelhead, and then caught my second steelhead, and then caught my third steelhead. And I can't even tell you the amount of excitement that was going through my body at that point. It kind of changed everything for me.
Now, what did you study in college?
I actually went to school to be a physical education teacher.
And now,
So
and now you're not in that. You're in a retail type environment, but you also
yeah, yep.
you're
I'm a district manager for Aldi Foods. So
okay. And then you're a guide as well, and you recently
correct.
launched a
Yep.
website. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you do as a guide, and also like where people could find you, your web address and all that?
Yeah. So I actually started with Aldi, and my job I think similar to your previous job, it's very stressful. It's in the corporate world, so fly fishing gives me an opportunity to get out of that and really unwind. So anyway, I got hooked up with this. It's called Relentless Addiction Outdoors, and it's going to be an outdoor TV show. And I was working with those guys, and I'm still working with those guys a little bit. But I got in touch with Brian Cos, who with True North Trout, and got to talking to him. And I said, I'd like to get you guys out on the river, get some video, kind of talk about what you guys are all about with True North Trout. Got to talking to those guys, and they kind of encouraged me, hey, you might want to look into doing this guiding thing. So I looked into it, and obviously, like I said, teaching's part of my background, and quite honestly, with guiding, that's really part of what it's all about, is teaching people to not only catch fish, but teaching them to enjoy the river and how to enjoy the river and why we enjoy the river. So, so that being said, I worked with them, and I'm still working with those guys. And all my trout trips are through True North Trout. But I'm also kind of branching off with my own thing called Connected Guide Service. It's online at connected.fish, spelled just like it sounds. And we also have a Facebook page, obviously. But with that, I'm targeting more smallmouth bass, pike, and steelhead, basically anything south of Mount Pleasant.
Wow, that's great. Now, can you tell us, as you're guiding people, and you have people in the boat, do you have any crazy stories of anything that's happened with some of your clients who may have never fly fished before, but caught the bug after they went with you?
Yeah. So I got two stories I'll give you. One, my very first guide trip that I ever had. I took out a dad and his son and daughter. They were probably early 20s, and it was a 3-person walkway trip. So I'm already spread a little bit thin doing this, but they really want to just spend some time on the river together. I prefer to be in a boat because I got everything in front of me, but they wanted to just get on the river together, learn a bit about the river, learn a bit about how to cast and all those things. So I'm teaching all 3 of them how to cast. And this is maybe 5-10 minutes into the trip. And I turn around and I hear, uh-oh. And I turn back around and look at the guy, and he's got a size 16 parachute Adams buried in his neck.
And this is your first trip?
First trip ever. Yeah. Welcome to guiding, right? So, so I go and I look at it, and I've had hooks in me before. So I'm like, okay, we'll just back it right out. No big deal. Well, I generally mash my barbs, but in my haste to get these guys on the river, they were all excited. I didn't mash the barb on this fly. And so there's a lesson learned right there. But, it was past the barb, buried in his neck. And I basically said, hey, there's a couple ways we can go about this. I can poke it through, mash the barb, and then back it out. Or you can just bite down on the strap of your waders, and I'll just rip it out of there. And I had to rip it out, and he took it like a champ. But it was quite the interesting deal.
Oh, wow.
So I hope that they continue to fly fish. I know that he and his dad were heading out to Colorado to do a trip. And that was the last I talked to him. So, and then I had another trip with some guys. I guided. We had a trip back in June. It was during the Hex Hash, but we had a big storm rolling in, so we decided to go out a little bit early. And these guys had fly fished a little bit, but not a ton. And so we got out there and we were determined to catch some fish, even though there was no bugs going on. There was a big storm rolling in at like 10 p.m. So we went out kind of early. And these guys just had just an inexplicably awesome day. I think we boated like 25 trout, with no hatch going on. It was wild. And we were changing flies and doing all sorts of stuff. And the one guy was from Arizona, and actually I just had a steelhead trip with those guys a couple weeks ago, and they're all fired up about fishing. They booked me for 2 or 3 days next summer, so it kind of infected them at that point because they just had an awesome day when they weren't really expecting it. It's kind of sometimes how it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, being a guide, and I've talked to other people too on this podcast, probably ad nauseum, but I've talked to them about the joy of putting someone else on fish when you're introducing them to fly fishing. Is that something you enjoy, seeing other people hook fish that you introduce?
And that's, quite honestly, that's really where guiding started for me. Like I told you with my buddy Adam, when I took him steelhead fishing, I was just so pumped up about these fish and this river and doing all this stuff that I had to get him on them. I had to share that with him. And then I got him on him, and I talked to my other buddies back home. I was like, hey, you guys got to come over, spend the night. We're going to hit the river early. We're going to get on some steelhead. And so I had 3 or 4 other buddies that over time that I've gotten them their first steelhead, or helped them to get their first steelhead, I guess. And when I see those guys get their first steelhead, like just something about that species, and getting the first one under your belt and being a part of that for those guys has been awesome. And that kind of carries over into the rest of my guiding. When I see somebody catch their first trout or catch a trout they've never caught before, it's pretty cool. Really gets me going.
Now, there's a lot of things that you can do outdoors. I mean, you could go wing shooting, which a lot of our listeners do wing shooting. You could do deer hunting, or there's all kinds of things. Why do you think fly fishing has been so special to you, Matt?
I think it's the thing everybody says is fish don't live in ugly places. I mean, there's certain things about being on a river. Even still water is not the same to me as being on a river. That constant movement of the river and the way you read the water is different. It just, I don't know. It's something that I have a hard time putting into words a lot of times. But it's just anytime I'm on the river, it's like everything else, all the stresses of my job, everything else, it's just out of there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally get it. Now, does your wife fish at all, or?
She does. Yep. So last summer we just had our first baby in July. So this year we didn't make it out west. But last year I took her and my parents out when we went to Southwest Montana and into Yellowstone. And she was a trooper, man. She backpacked into Cache Creek in Yellowstone with me 5 miles in, and we fished there, and we fished some other smaller rivers around Livingston, Montana. And she kept up, and she did an awesome job.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about, because my favorite thing to go for is smallmouth bass. Even though I live in Michigan and there's beautiful trout streams and everything, I love catching smallies. Can you tell us a little bit about, the types of flies that you use and kind of your process for going after those?
Yeah, so I really like catching them, like everybody does, on topwater. And a lot of times I can be super effective, but I really like to go subsurface for them, because feeling smash a streamer when you can't see them is just like that feeling. It's like when people talk about swinging for steelhead or streamer fishing for big browns, when they hammer that fly and almost rip the rod out of your hand. So I like probably my favorite fly to fish for smallmouth is Mike Schmidt's Meal Ticket. You familiar with that one?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so it's basically got like a lasered up head, and then rabbit strips on the back with some silly legs, and then the body's made out of like a streamer brush. And that fly, you can get it down in deep water if you need to. You can fish it shallow if you need to. It wiggles like crazy. And I've just done awesome on smallmouth with that fly in particular. Just anything with a big profile in the front with a really wiggly tail seems to be what I do the best on.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll put up a picture of that on our blog. Okay.
Probably my favorite color combo is gray and white for smallmouth.
Okay.
I'm not really. I don't. I think they key in on that because it's similar to a shad probably. But just gray and white early in the year, like late April, early May, it's just. I mean, they can't lay off it.
Now it's December, and I woke up with probably 3 or 4 inches of snow on the ground this morning here in Grand Rapids. What do you, when you're fishing for steelhead, and I know a lot of browns this time of year, are you using the same flies, or what are you using this time of year?
Steelhead this time of year, if I can get a warm day, I tie up, it's basically an egg sucking leash, but it's a lot more flowy than that. I basically use, small cactus chenille for a head to make like an egg, and then just wrap Palmer purple hackle, and then just a bunch of marabou and some flashabou on the back, so it really wiggles in the current. And I like to dead drift that fly under an indicator. So I'm basically nymphing with a streamer. It seems like I do the best on that fly. I probably caught more fish on that fly than maybe all others combined.
Wow. And it's a cold time of year. Do you fish year round then, or do you?
Oh yeah. Definitely. I think I saw my first snowflakes of the year today, so I would officially declare it fly tying season at this point. But I do fish year round. I don't do as much smallmouth late in the year just because I think it gets pretty slow. You can find them in big holes, but they're stacked up in that one big hole. You got to fish so slow, and kind of all the things I like about smallmouth fishing are not all that effective. Just being able to fish them fast and feel that big explosive strike and all that kind of stuff. So I do mostly, if I can get a warm day, I'm streamer fishing for big browns or usually indicator fishing for steelhead.
And what about pike? I know something with your connected.fish. Pike is something that you go after. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? I know a lot of people listen to our podcast that are on warmer climates. And like down in Texas, we have a huge following in Texas, and some of the warmer climates where there's no pike. Can you tell us a little bit about that fish? And can you also tell us the process of going after that?
Yeah, they're such an odd fish. I mean, they're like, I'll be fishing to a pike, throw in to a hole like 6 times, and then at number 7 they'll hit it. Like when you hear about streamer fishing for big browns, it's like you give them one shot, and then if they don't eat it, they're not going to eat it. Pike are just so strange, and they'll just sit in weird spots in the river. I was fishing it was early August. We were fishing the Shiawassee, and there was a pike laying in maybe 2 feet of water. And I thought there was something wrong with the fish, right? So I threw at it like probably at least a dozen times, ran the streamer maybe 2-3 inches in front of its face, changed flies a couple times. The pike did not move. I thought it was dead or something laying on the bottom. So I walked over to it to see what the heck was going on, and the thing shot off like a bullet. It was unbelievable. And they're a weird fish, and the best I do is just on big, bulky stuff with a lot of flash and a lot of wiggle. And just keep fishing that hole in big, slow back eddies. That's where I tend to find most of those.
Yeah, that was my next question: is where do you find those fish? How do you go after them? So that's really good. Do you know much about the species of pike? I mean, do you know much about the actual science of the fish, or can you describe that?
No, unfortunately, I really don't. Pursuing pike is, as far as all the species that I fish for, it's one of the newer ones. And it just, I found some really awesome spots on some rivers local to me, where there's just several really big pike. And so I want to share that with people. But I don't know a ton about them as a species in terms of like biologically and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, as far as pike, what's the biggest pike that you've caught on the fly?
On the fly, 34 inches.
That's a big boy.
Yes.
Yeah. And what kind of fly were you using? Something that you were describing earlier, or?
No, it was like it was basically a chartreuse and white double receiver. I was smallmouth fishing, and it came barreling out of a wood pile in one of those big, deep back eddies, and just hammered that fly. And the cool thing about pike is, have you caught many pikes?
No, I have not.
Okay, they are so fast to the fly. It is unbelievable. They'll just appear out of nowhere, grab that fly, and turn the other way.
Wow.
It's just insane how fast they are to a fly. Like if you watch GT videos on the internet, how fast those fish are.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's similar to a pike about how they attack a fly. I mean, I'm going back to when I'm starting fly fishing. I'm like, I'm a trout guy, and then I'm like, okay, let me check out this pike thing, and it's just they come after that fly so fast. It's unbelievable.
And so that's got to be a lot of fun to catch.
Yes. Yeah, and they dig hard and they fight hard. They're a nasty, just mean, angry fish with a bad attitude, and they like to eat big flies. So it can be a lot of fun.
Now, when you talk to people who fly fish for pike, do they seem to be the people who, the anglers that go after these pike? Do they seem to be pretty honed in on just that species, or is pike kind of like, yeah, it's just part of our regimen?
Some guys are. I think if you fish for smallmouth, you fish for pike. 'Cause a lot of times they're in some of the same places. Like you're going to find the smallmouth in a lot of the faster, rockier water, and then you're going to find those pike in the slower water. But there are guys that just they target pike, similar to like musky guys. It seems like where they just target pike, and that's what they want to catch.
Now, can you tell us what are some life lessons that guiding and fly fishing has taught you?
Um, That's a good one. I think it's one of them is just patience, right? I mean, that's the same thing with any kind of fishing. But there's days, especially if you streamer fish at all, there's days where you spend on the river and your mind and your body is just broken, and you can't figure it out. You can't figure out what they want. They won't move on anything. But you're appreciating what's around you more than just the fish, right? And it's kind of those appreciate what you kind of have things, where you don't always hang a 2-foot brown, right? But you're appreciating being on a river, hanging out with your buddies, pounding banks with streamers, all that kind of stuff. So I think for me that's one of them. And then another one is just the ability to relax and be out there. I know I've listened to your podcast enough that that's something you definitely appreciate about fly fishing. I'm kind of the same way with my Monday to Friday job, if you will. It is very stressful. There's a lot going on. I work a lot of hours, but when I get out on a river and spend time with friends or even by myself and watch a fish sip and dry flies or watch a brown trout hammer a streamer or a smallmouth, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing. So what's next for you? Are you gonna continue guiding and working at Aldi? I mean, you got a new baby and everything, but what do you see? What do you see as next for you in fly fishing?
I'm definitely going to continue guiding. I want to build up the smallmouth thing for right now. I think the river that I do most of my fishing on, it really doesn't see a ton of pressure, especially from fly anglers. It's got some challenges. There's a couple golf courses, and I think there's a lot of fertilizer that gets in the river. So there's parts of the lower river that just get totally choked with weeds. So late in the year, it becomes tough to fish. But I really want to build that up because I think it's a fishery that can be really, really productive. And and I don't think it's appreciated enough, especially here locally. So, and then the fly fishing community locally here. I live in Shiawassee County, and I don't think there's enough fly fishing going on here for the quality. So my hope is to kind of build that up. But long term, I see myself sticking with Aldi. I do enjoy my job, however, it is stressful. But the guiding thing gives me an opportunity to get that teaching that I went to school for, obviously, like I mentioned, and it gives me an opportunity to do that and appreciate other people catching fish. So.
Yeah, we get that a lot of times, and we had Anita Colton on here, and she's from Cross Current Guide Services out in the the northeast there, and she went to school to be a teacher, so I think a lot of guides seem to have that natural tendency to want to teach. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, if you don't want to teach people and you don't want to work with people, then guiding is just not something you're going to enjoy. I mean, you can do it and you can put people on fish if you know a lot about fish and you know what flies to eat and stuff. You can put people on fish. But I don't think, unless you like to teach, I don't think you're going to enjoy guiding, because a lot of your clients are not guys that spend 150 days a year on the water and can just catch fish on their own, right? If they could do that, they wouldn't be hiring a guy a lot of times. That's just an expensive boat ride for them. So a lot of times you got to be teaching people stuff. And if somebody spends a day on the river with me and they haven't learned anything, I don't feel like I've done my job. It's not, hiring a guide is not a cheap thing by any means. So for somebody to fish with me, I owe it to them. I mean, whether we catch 50 fish or 2 fish or 0 fish, I owe it to them for them to get out of my boat or get out of the water, being a better angler than they were when they got in. So,
yeah, that's a great approach, and it seems like that's how it is in life. You need to be aligned with what your giftings are and your talents are, and I think there's room in this industry for everyone, no matter what your talents are. Not everyone's a teacher or a guide. I couldn't be a guide. I don't think I'd have the pay. I love putting people on fish for fun, but I don't think I'd have.
Yeah, it's a different thing. You feel some pressure, like when you first get on the water until you get that first fish in the net. There's a little bit of tension there because you so badly want people to catch fish, and I think that a lot of times people don't understand. Like, as a guide, I want you to catch fish as bad or worse than you want to catch fish. Trust me.
Right.
So.
Well, that's great. Well, one more time, I know I asked you this, so we'll edit that, but can you tell us where people can find you and how they can reach you to schedule a trip?
Yeah. So if you go to my website, connected.fish, it's Connected Guide Service, but connected.fish, or on Facebook at Connected Guide Service, or just search my name, look me up, and all my contact information is right there. But yeah, definitely the Facebook is obviously a huge one for people, but the website is something I just got started, just opened that up. So if anybody has any pointers on how to make a website better, I'm all ears. So I'm a fishing guy and a deer hunter. I'm not much of a techno savvy person, so any help is much appreciated.
Well, great. Well, we'll put some links up and make sure people will be able to reach out to you. And thank you very much, Matt, for joining us tonight.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you for joining us on the Remote No Pressure podcast. Be sure to go to our website at remotenopressure.com. Sign up for our mailing list. Be part of this journey that we're on, and it has been incredible. And I'm so glad that you joined us. And until next week, go fishing.